Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of System Link for Wednesday, the 9th of April, 2025. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Mike Hazelton from the Xbox Guide. Mike, how are you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm good, thanks. Still got a bit of a cough, so you'll have to excuse me if I go on mute for a bit or don't go on mute and cough down the microphone, but we'll see how we get on.
It's absolutely fine. I am on the cusp myself, as always, being two dads just battling off our child germs at all times. Our first evening ever getting a full multi-stream going on with shared chat. It's been some time coming to get this one organised. Shout out to Chronic and all of those lovely guys over in Gaming Arcadia who gave me the big push. Asa made the recommendation too for some software to use, and Gamsley as well, mentioning about how it's definitely worth doing. So shout out to all of you guys over there. Thank you so much for being so supportive of everything we're doing over here at Burly Bird Media, and we hope to have some continued synergy with you guys because you've been a treat to work with since day one. So folks, we've got quite a bit to cover tonight. We're going to be looking at South of Midnight, Atomfall, some impressions and thoughts about where those games are currently at. I've definitely got some thoughts on South. Atomfall, still something I haven't played yet. I really want to get to that. So just sort of looking at general sentiment there and seeing what people think. We're also going to be covering Game Pass coming up for this month. Some sort of last thoughts on some of the Switch pre-order situation going on with Switch 2. And then we'll be wrapping up. Our deep dive this evening will be on the just hot off the press announced Xbox Game Showcase 2025, which is coming up in June. We'll be doing some hopes and dreams, maybe some predictions in there as well. I might even get a spicy bet or two going in there to add to our bet tracker. So we'll see how that one goes tonight. We're going to be diving in right now. We're going to kick things off, I think, with South of Midnight. I've made no secret that this is one of my most anticipated, if not my most anticipated for this year. Didn't get the deluxe edition. I didn't end up getting the early access. I've waited for the launch yesterday and playing it through with my wife. We've done the first 3 chapters now of the game together, and it's exactly what I was expecting it to be. Given all the trailers, all of the interviews, all the content we've been shown up to this point, all about this notion of world building storytelling within a really sort of fantastical space. and the character design, the voice acting, all those things are just ticking boxes for me. I've been having a blast with it. I actually find, when I've looked at across sort of some of the wider sentiment around a lot of the other reviews, saying that the combat is lackluster or sort of not as enjoyable, I actually really liked the combat in it. I liked its specificity and how simple it was, with some sort of clear variances and upgrades that you can do as you go. It's actually the traversal that I found a little bit wonky. Some of the stuff that's a bit more sort of like, like Uncharted ledge grabbing and kind of navigating across things, I found that actually a little bit stiff and a bit sort of unresponsive. That's been a bit tricky to navigate, really. But other than that, having an absolute blast. Have you got to it yet, Mike? Are you playing it yet, or are you planning to pick it up if you haven't already?
Yeah, I'm just a bit behind you. I'm just at the start of the third chapter, which I believe is where you meet the catfish. So I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, my first impressions were really positive. I think it initially was kind of what I expected, and what I wanted, which was like really strong story, great voice acting. Graphically and cutscenes, it looks amazing. The stop motion stuff looks really nice. But I agree, the combat is better than I expected and better than it looked in the trailers. But I think for me, what I need from a game like this is quite simple combat. I don't want it to be overcomplicated. I want it to drip feed me new moves and things slowly so that I get a chance to use them before, the next one comes along. Because what I always have a problem where it's like, here's a new combo, and then you get another one before you even use the previous one, and then you end up only remembering like one set of moves, and you don't kind of really get to use the depth of combat. And it seemed, really satisfying. I found that the dodging worked really well, and the I don't know if it's just maybe it's aimed at a certain audience, maybe it's aimed at a slightly more casual audience, and it's a bit simple, because generally I don't play third person action adventures that much. I don't tend to enjoy them, but I'm really liking this. So I don't know if it's because it's aimed at like people that aren't that familiar with the genre. I agree on the traversal. The first time you did the ledge hanging, I pressed A to drop down because that's what you do in games.
In every
it jumped me off
game
the bridge
that.
into the river. And it's very stiff, very telegraphed. Like, here's a ledge, here's another ledge that sticks out like a sore thumb. And again, I think it's making it deliberately easy for people to get around, to get to the next story beat. And I think my favorite bit is just how pacey it is. You have like a minute or two of traversal, like 2 or 3 minutes of combat, and then like 5 minutes of story, or even if the story is kind of unfolding around you in the game world.
But it's definitely weighted there, isn't it? It's weighted towards the story relative to those other mechanics. Chronic, just really quickly to address that in chat, do not worry, we will not be spoiling any specific story beats or anything like that, or going too in depth. On launch day to be dropping spoilers, I think would be a faux pas from us, so don't worry. Big Manny, good to see you in chat. Thank you so much for jumping in on Twitch, and Gaming with Passion as well. Good evening, saw you jumping in on the YouTube chat there as well. Folks, obviously the video on demand version of this will now be uploaded live to YouTube as soon as the episode is complete, so please do check that out if you haven't had a chance to. Those of you listening after our live recording here on Wednesdays at 9:15, shout out to all of you guys that check out these episodes after we record, so thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciated, actually, you mentioned about the drip feed of moves. There was a really nice sequence where the different weaving abilities get introduced to you, and it's tied to narrative moments where you see characters, I won't, again, without being too specific, a group of characters escaping something, and it was a really nice, I think, process of you unlocking those moves, which kept the quote-unquote puzzle solving in terms of the traversal was very, very simple, but it felt rewarding in a sense that it was, like you said, it was well paced, and it didn't feel like they were sort of throwing a giant set of moves at you all at once. It was really deliberately introduced like that, and that was very sensible. I think the pacing on that was very, very restrained, and I appreciated that. I think also as well, given actually that, it's funny, isn't it? I think a lot of the criticisms around the combat was that it sort of, on paper, seemed sort of quite. It seems quite repetitive on paper. You essentially go into these zones that trigger combat as you're moving through the world. But in some ways, I quite liked the sort of the structure to that. I knew that I was walking in, didn't quite know what I was going to, what of those. I think we've had about 3 different enemy types so far, each with different interesting moves that you do have to sort of, I've actually found the combat quite challenging, even on balanced mode. I've died a couple times already, having to, time your dodge rolls effectively, which create those stuns, chaining attacks, and using some of their abilities against them. There is quite a bit of nuance to it. I've really appreciated actually its focus and its specificity. There's not sort of like, there's not that over reliance on light and heavy attacks and all kind of like, there's no combos particularly that you're doing. It's just kept really, really accessible, and I think that does it's to its favor. It does well because of it. I think it's more, I find sometimes even just like vaulting over ledges sometimes, or especially doing the climbing, it's either very, very obvious where you're supposed to go, almost to a point where it sort of feels like you're not actually exploring, you're just essentially ticking platforming boxes, or it just doesn't quite land where you think it will, like when you do a jump, or I've had a bit of that where I've accidentally, like, my ankle's got in the water and I've suddenly drowned and been respawned. There's been a bit of that going on.
The jump is a bit weak, isn't it? Like, you think, I can definitely make this, and you do make it, but you kind of fall down the ledge and have to clamber up quite often. It's very quite old-fashioned, like not necessarily the combat or and the storytelling, I think is pretty modern, but it is linear. There's a small amount of exploration. I don't know if we'll get more as we go. Like the combat as well. I don't know if the combat will get more complicated as we go. You imagine it will to an extent, but there's only a small amount of reason at the moment, and at the end of chapter 2, to go off the beaten path, and you get some extra resources and things. But it's not like there's multiple routes you can take, or it's very much almost like you're walking down a corridor, although the corridor's outside, to get to the next thing.
Yeah, chapter 3, when you've just met Catfish, chapter 3, when you get a bit further into that does open things up a little bit. You find a few more sort of alternate routes to go and get the floofs, which, by the way, love that's the key term for the resource that you use. I immediately was happy about that as a great cat reference. But there's a lot more sort of poking around to try and do these like sort of spin-off routes. They have their dead ends essentially. They don't then necessarily always circle back or take you to where you were going, but a different way. They're sort of like diversions while the critical path is maintained. But there's a lot more of those that get introduced in chapter 3, because so much of it is, well, it's the, from what I've played so far, it's certainly the longest chapter so far. In terms of progressing through that, like that, I got through chapters 1 and 2 relatively quickly, and chapter 3, I kind of it definitely took like most of this morning when I was playing with my wife to get through it. So there's a little bit more sort of variance in terms of where those unlockables are placed, allowing you to kind of go off a little bit. Couple of bits that haven't landed for me particularly well were whenever you've transitioned to a sort of like, it's sort of almost like a mind place. It's like a subconscious, like a dream state where you go to, where it's very sort of open and empty, and there's not really much there. I think visually I don't think the art design quite holds up in those areas. It looks a little bit unpolished, and that kind of pulled me out of a couple of moments. But conversely, some of the environment and lighting design is just stunning in this. It really like seems like it's running at a pretty locked 60 as well. Like, I haven't really experienced any performance issues or glitches or anything like that. So just nice to see a Xbox Game Studios game well optimized out of the gate. We've had a number of games that haven't quite either hit expected performance targets or have had server issues like Flight Sim and things like that. So, not to mention things like Redfall or Starfield. So it's nice to see them come out of the gate and it be polished, much like Indie was at Christmas, and much like Avowed seems to have been. The time that's spent getting this polished up has certainly been well spent.
Yeah, I mean, as always, I think the interiors look really nice. Some of the lighting outdoors is really good. The bit at the start where kind of the shit hits the fan, you kind of have to focus on what you're doing and just take in the atmosphere. The atmosphere it creates is really good, but I think if you stop and look at any of it, it's quite ropey. But it's one of those, the game is encouraging you to run as fast as you can, and the point isn't to stop and look at all of this stuff. But overall, I've been pretty impressed with it. My only negative from a technical point of view is other than some of the moves you can do, there isn't any physics on any of the objects and stuff, which is always a bit of a negative. So I can kind of see why it's a budget game, because there's a couple of things that I've tried to do, like whatever, smashing bits of the environment that you'd
Pots,
expect to be
the little
breakable.
pots, yeah.
Or pots. Don't put pots in if you can't break them.
Absolutely.
And also, I think going to I can't remember where it was, but there was some bad thing had happened that was commented on in a cutscene, and then I kind of walked over to it as in gameplay, and I expected the character to comment on it because she comments on a lot of stuff around as she's walking through the world, and that didn't happen. I think that is the extra kind of polish that you expect from a AAA team, which clearly the Compulsion are not, and so you just have to kind of set your expectations. It's not got that depth to it that narratively that some games have.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you go in knowing what to expect, the storytelling is still super effective. I
think that's fair.
Don't normally do this, but the codexes in this are presented in a really nice way.
Yeah,
because they've got a visual and they're short. And I keep going in every time the codex comes up just to read the stuff, and I never do that in games.
No, I always
because five pages on.
It's always so dense, isn't it? And it becomes so it almost like pulls you out of it, even though it's designed to get you more immersed in the world. It actually makes me less invested because it feels like a chore. But I think it was the fact that the first page is the character list, and you get like a little 3-line context summary about who they are. That really helped me keep things straight in my head, and I think made me a lot more invested straight away. One thing also I really like about it is, even though certainly those early areas, it feels like you're they're designed to teach you the application of the mechanics as you learn the moves. Once you get past that stuff, it feels like the world exists not because of you, but it's just it exists. You happen to be moving through it, and that's a really nice feeling. It doesn't feel like it's been constructed for you, the player. I think the early missions do, very much so. The early areas do, because they're introducing you those mechanics. But it certainly, when you get into Chapter 3, it feels like a lived-in space. The tree sequence as well, again, which I won't spoil, but it's surprisingly emotional, actually. The storytelling really kicks into gear pretty much from Catfish's introduction onwards. So lots to look forward to. I mean, I can't wait to dive back in. It's going to be, I've kind of like reserved it for playing with my wife now, so there's no way I can't be be jumping an episode ahead. You can't be trying to box set this thing. I've got to now play with her right through to the end now. So we'll keep going.
It reminded me a bit of Life is Strange, just in how well they have adapted, or how well they've crafted it. So it does feel genuinely as though the story's being told by people that have lived through that experience, or they have family or have extensive knowledge of the history behind it, and it all feels really natural. It's not contrived or anything, which I think it can be a worry when you have like a team that's taking on a topic like this. But the world building for me is similar to sort of the quality that you get in the Life is Strange games. And it helps that like the start of the game is very similar. You're like just in the house, and you're kind of living the life of the main character, which is a really nice way to kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Carrot's Disciple into Twitch. Hey Rocco, good to see you. What's your go-to from Flavor 38? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I'll take a Southern Bayou burger to keep it on point with South of Midnight. And you know what I'm talking about. That's definitely a long-standing in-joke from a WhatsApp message about an hour ago. Let's look a little bit. Let's do a little sort of mention of Atomfall. Something that actually is on my backlog. I haven't played this yet, but from Rebellion onto Game Pass Day 1, the Sniper Elite developer, it kind of gives me Swimming in Sevens vibes, but I really want to reiterate that whenever I say anything like that, it's not a criticism at all. I think there's a place for games like that, which you kind of alluded to it with Compulsion, sort of not, or rather they're kind of stretching up against their capability of their team size. I think Atomfall fits in really nicely with that sort of AA space, and it's really nice to see that it's found an audience. It's been their most successful launch on Game Pass ever, and you think how popular those Sniper Elite games are, especially on that service. So really nice to see Rebellion continue to find success with that. I was always nervous, but when they have done a couple of offshoot games like Strange Brigade, which I really enjoyed, but they that didn't really connect with an audience particularly, not a particularly wide one anyway. And it's nice just to see it's another success story for a developer, right? I'm definitely intrigued. It's giving me sort of Fallout vibes, and I'm thinking it might be a summer investigation for me.
Yeah, it's a tough one because when I first saw it, it looked like Sniper Elite. Obviously, a completely different genre, but graphically looked like Sniper Elite. And I think we were both disappointed that it wasn't a multiplayer game, because that's kind of what especially co-op is kind of what we're looking for a lot of the time. But there's also I'm not sure if it's Digital Foundry, but we're really critical of it. I didn't actually read the article, but the headline was very critical. But watching, I think it was on Gaming Arcadia when you were on. Some of the anecdotal things that people have said about it really make me want to play it. The comparisons to Outer Worlds and Fallout, and it being again a team that knows their limitations, and it's a very pared back world, but the small world you're in is really full of detail and a lot of fun to play through. And it sounds like they're doing, a few interesting things with it, but it's also the sort of game that kind of harkens back to, games of 10 years ago, where you had a lot more sort of experiences like this single player narrative experiences that were quite limited in scope, but ultimately, like you say, got 7s and 8s and are really fondly remembered on the 360 generation as well in particular. So I'll definitely give it a go, I think.
Yeah, for sure. It's low stakes because of the way they've distributed it. You've got the option of Game Pass if you've got it. But also I think just the notion of a game like that taking an engine that they already are well versed in, has been iterated on multiple times. We've seen that recently with Sniper Elite Resistance, switching it to first person and then using their AI model. It's very recognizable, some of those AI behaviors I've seen in gameplay. It looks like you're fighting in Sniper Elite. The responses from them seem very similar. I really like to see them iterating on tech they've spent a long time working on and then applying it to this completely different genre. Just conceptually, I think it's really exciting. So definitely one to keep an eye on for sure.
They've literally released 2 games a month apart.
Yeah,
because they were both day one, weren't they, on Game Pass? I think. Which just I love that for a team that's not think be having 2, like Game Pass has been last month. Atomfall was like all it had. So I think Sniper Elite as well was kind of
a big one for January,
doing a lot, carrying it in January. So I hope they were well compensated for that.
For sure, just the timing alone, right? The fact that they've been able to lock that down. Yeah. So we got, now speaking of Game Pass, we're looking ahead now to April. What do we got coming up, Mike? What's on the cards?
Well, I was looking relatively. Obviously, we had South of Midnight, which is the one we've all been looking forward to, and GTA was the big one that kind of unexpectedly probably got added, and people are thinking, is it going to tie in with a something else for GTA that we're going to hear about, hopefully. Blueprints, I've been seeing a lot of really strong reviews for. And we should also talk about PlayStation Plus, which it has been added to as well, which is interesting. An interesting approach for like an indie to launch on both services on day one effectively, especially when they've had such good reviews. So
it's a bit of a trend for that this year. FBC Firebreak, the upcoming Control spin-off, is going to be a day one on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus as well. So we're seeing that a little bit more now.
But then from a multiplayer side, I think you can understand it.
For single player,
a bit more, like for a single player game to be doing it. I mean, I can see it doing really well on Steam, but there's Borderlands 3, which I know we're talking about whether we're going to give that a go. And then probably Diablo 3 is the other big one. But overall, probably a decent lineup. GTA, doing a lot of heavy lifting, but it's been in at least twice before, I think, and it's been in PlayStation Plus as well. So it kind of does the rounds for quite a short amount of time, and then drops out. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we get a trailer for the next game at some point while it's fresh,
still in
coming
Game
into
Pass,
Game
of
Pass,
course. Yeah, just
at
circling
least,
back to our conversation about Rebellion and their release cadence. Gaming with Passion on YouTube just mentioning that they're also making a VR game, Zombie Army VR. That's coming out soon, apparently this year. So a third title on the brew from them. So pretty crazy they've been able to maintain that level of cadence. But yeah, so that, I think, given sort of I've seen some of the work you've done on Xbox Guide, but some of your reviews and comparing previous months in previous years, it seems like a bit of a step up this month. I mean, certainly South of the Midnight's a big get and win for us, but in broader terms, Borderlands 3 coming off the back of the Switch 2 confirmation that the fourth game's going to be on there. There's a lot of sort of now finally some positive chatter about that game, because I don't think it's been pretty lukewarm up to this point. So I think Borderlands 3 dropping in there as a co-op game is really smart. Having GTA and Diablo in there as well on top of that is looking a much more healthy additions for sure.
Yeah, but PlayStation Plus, which I think was announced today, Hogwarts Legacy.
Right?
It was a massive, massive. Like, I don't know if you can say it's equivalent to GTA, but among certain audiences, it definitely would be. Blueprints again, and then Lost Records, which I've really been.
Yes, the second episode.
I've been
right?
waiting for that. Yeah, I've been waiting for that to come to Game Pass. So pretty competitive. There, I think you'd have to say. Obviously, South of Midnight is kind of setting Game Pass apart, and that's kind of what you're paying the money for, is for those first party games. But overall, yeah, pretty good from both sides.
Absolutely. Well, we've spent a lot of time in our previous episode of System Link talking about Switch 2. We kind of recorded that shortly after the Direct had been announced. Obviously, there's been the usual clarifications and press release updates to certain things. The big one for me actually was something I completely missed during the actual showcase, was that the upgrades for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are going to be included as part of the Switch Online Plus expansion pack, which I was not expecting, and I think it adds, with that plus the GameCube games, adds some really nice value to that. Currently no price rise. There's been no mention of any price increase to the subscription. They're including game chat within it for free for the next year before it becomes part of the sub and a requirement to use. I would hazard a guess that we're going to get some kind of price increase maybe a year from now, given all the added value that we've seen there. But Switch Online is by far the cheapest of all three, and if you get the family pack for a year's sub, it's pretty reasonable, especially for now for what you're getting. Gaming with Passion just coming in on YouTube, just saying we might get trailer 2 for GTA 6 this month, because they have a habit of announcing stuff in April. They have an investors call at the start of next month as well. Good catch there. That's good timing potentially on that. Chronic, thank you so much for jumping in again. Really appreciate you coming to check us out. Folks, if you are not already, please do consider searching up Gaming Arcadia. It's a really lovely community over there. They've been very supportive of us here at Burly Bird Media, and Chronic, you are a well appreciated member of both communities, both here at Burly Bird and also over at Gaming Arcadia. So thank you very much, man, for jumping in. Yeah, I think it's.
I just want to on the pricing. Pricing of the online, not the pricing, all the other pricing stuff.
Yeah.
The problem with the Switch is it's the multiplayer. There's such a small number of games that are actually viable to play multiplayer on. So you're not. Whereas on PlayStation and Xbox, you're paying. First and foremost, you're paying to play multiplayer games, with everything that comes with that, and there's quite a lot. And then it's like, added value is the games that you get. Whereas with Switch, I think it's in the situation where you're paying for the games, the classic games, and then it's like, and you can play like 2 games in multiplayer and it'll be a bad experience. So that's, and I think the game chat thing is them trying to show people we can do proper online infrastructure. Try it for a year and see what you think and see if it's worth you signing up. So I think they're trying to flip it so that it's online multiplayer, chat first, and then as an added extra you get the games, which is what it was supposed to be, but because it kind of launched so badly from a multiplayer perspective, it never really worked out like that. But I think you can't really look at it as a direct comparison with PlayStation and Xbox in terms of value, just because the multiplayer infrastructure's almost non-existent.
Yeah, that's fair. And also, I think as well, what you're looking at with Switch Online is you're really subscribing to is the libraries. That's the main draw, I think, for that. Yes, it does enable cloud saves and online multiplayer in those select games, like you mentioned, but it's certainly for me in terms of what I tend to use it for and where I see the value of it in and of itself, separate of a comparison with those other platforms, is the libraries that you're accessing and those games. I
still great value for those libraries for sure.
For sure. I still maintain though, and this has always been a bugbear for me, is that I think any game that is on that subscription service should be available to purchase individually. You should be able to download and buy whatever games you want to, and then have the sub-service as a all-you-can-eat option, but as an option, not the be-all and end-all. I think mandating people that they have to do that, when they don't then have the multiplayer infrastructure, particularly to back up the reason why you keep that sub going outside of those games, I think is a bit shitty of them, and I think it's not particularly consumer-friendly.
And we may end up in a situation where, I don't know, say they do something like they do enable matchmaking for the split screen multiplayer functionality somehow, which wouldn't be impossible. Then they say, to get this, you have to go to another tier, or you have to buy another expansion pass. Or the problem is you don't own any of this stuff, do you? I know the whole digital ownership thing is a bit vacuous anyway, but when on Game Pass, you kind of know if Xbox goes bankrupt, Microsoft goes bankrupt, obviously not going to happen, and the servers go offline, you can't play any of those games anymore. I would like to have the catalog on my console
for sure,
and be able to stop paying and just carry on being able to play. Like you say, it's a shame, and it is something we obviously have had in the past when you could purchase those games individually on previous consoles. But
it does open up a can of worms, I think, around the pricing. As it again is what will they then do with that? Do they then set what they did before, where those games are sort of $9.99 or $14.99, I think, on the virtual console stores prior? I could see a future where they're like, oh, it's £20 for Ocarina of Time, on N64. I could just see that happening, and I just think that is then wading into some pretty dicey territory for a lot of people when price is something that's on the forefront of people's minds. I wanted to talk a little bit about my pre-order experience with Switch 2, because we were told, we were waiting for the 8th of April, yesterday, for the Nintendo Store pre-orders to go live by invitation, based on whether you accepted marketing, whether you've been a subscriber for X amount of time and played X number of hours. Pretty much the day after the Direct, every retailer just jumped the gun. Argos, Very, AO, Currys, they all just went live with their pre-orders and sold out within probably half an hour, minutes even. Amazon were doing an invitation-only system. Tried that, didn't get an invite. The only reason why I was able to secure my Switch 2 is because, much like the other retailers, Game also went live with their pre-orders. And then at about 9 PM, I happened to see someone on Threads mention that they just secured their pre-order and dived on and managed to get one. There was no notification that they were charging at the point of pre-order, which was a little bit of a heart in throat moment for me. Fortunately, I had the cash flow to be able to do it, but it drained all of any of my short-term savings I had been putting aside for June. It was not ready to be purchased in that sense. I would have much rather put that on a credit card if I'd known that was going to happen. Quite underhand of Game, because I went back and looked to make sure I wasn't just being thick, and they didn't advertise anywhere that they were going to charge you up front until you click that button at the very end. I saw some people bitching about the delivery cost, that they were charging $9.99 for delivery. I've got no issue with that at all. That they're not Amazon Prime, they don't have a subscription service anymore, so to ship it day and date for a console, I've got no problem with that. It's £10, but
it's Fraser's group though, isn't it? The like, you want to get anything from Sports Direct and you have to pay delivery, even if you're spending like £200 at Sport. Not that I do, but if you're spending £200 at Sports Direct, you still have to pay delivery, and it takes like 3 days to come.
That's a shitload of badminton rackets.
I think it's probably people's experience of Game.
Yeah.
The only time I would ever buy something from Game is for a console launch.
Yep.
So the last time I bought something from Game, they weren't owned by Fraser's group, so the website's changed and the stuff around delivery has changed. So I think it was probably just a shock to people. But yeah, I can see both sides. Like,
yeah,
if it gets there reliably and isn't broken, then you're willing to probably spend £10, but it would be probably nice to have the option to collect it
For
from,
sure. I just think this whole
store.
thing, the whole thing has been needlessly stressful, and the way that retailers have just sort of shit out their pre-orders, it was really badly
Did you get an
handled.
invite from Nintendo
Nope.
yesterday?
Nope.
God, if
Yeah.
you're not getting an invite, who is?
Right?
Jesus.
I mean, I'm in there. I'm on the payroll. No, I'm
Are you opted into marketing?
for litigation purposes. I'm not. Yeah, yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm opted into marketing already, so that was already
Crazy.
set.
Man.
Yeah, and the thing is, the one thing I really want from them, because everything else was pre-orderable on game, so they were doing the Pro controllers, they were doing cases, they had the SD card, the Express SD cards on there. The one thing I actually want, besides the console, is the GameCube controller, and it's only on Nintendo Online's, much like the N64 controller and the SNES one, the wireless ones, which you can still buy. They are still available on there as long as you have an active Nintendo Switch Online membership and it ties to your account. The only place to get that GameCube controller right now is on there, and that's really tough, because I went on thinking that it was actually only the consoles that required the invitation, but you go on go on any of the games or even the camera accessory, you click that and it takes you to a holding page which says enter your Nintendo account email that's received an invitation. I obviously tried to shit in my email there and it didn't validate. So even the accessories are currently under invitation only with them.
Crazy.
Which is nuts. So
can I ask what's in your bundle coming from game?
I've got the console.
Did you manage to get the package?
Yes.
Or did you have to get?
Yeah, I did. I got the,
because so many people will have missed out because they'll have had to have got the base console and spent whatever
75 quid
on Mario Kart.
Yeah. So I did manage to get the Switch 2 and the Mario Kart World bundle. I've got that one, the 4291. So that's on its way for launch. Game with Passion coming on YouTube saying, I waited a few days, then I registered on Amazon Germany for an invite, and I got my invite after a few hours. Nice. So going abroad for that one. That's high stakes on shipping. But yeah, no, good way around it.
You're going to use your existing Pro controller?
For the immediate, yeah, I want to get that new one. It looks really nice. But for immediate, I was going to use my current.
I saw you can use the GameCube adapter in dock mode, so I would definitely be like, I've got no interest in having a wireless GameCube controller. I would only ever play the GameCube. The GameCube games I want to play would all be multiplayer games. Yep. I need at least 2 GameCube controllers for. I'm not spending 160 quid or whatever it would be to get 2 from Nintendo. So I just it's nice that at least that's. I mean, you kind of expect it to be compatible, but at least it is. You can't take anything for granted.
No, exactly. But that is nice to see that they've, especially when you think that they had that originally for Smash Brothers Ultimate, didn't they? That was no, it wasn't Ultimate. I think it might have been for the Wii U version. They had that. I'm in Poland. They don't have any pre-orders listed. Oh wow, that's crazy. They don't have any pre-orders listed at all. Because I know that in the US and Canada they're currently paused because of the tariff situation going on over there. So didn't realize they weren't listed at all over there. So no, well done, Gaming with Passion, for being able to get that. That's nicely done. So yeah,
Benefits being in the EU, I guess.
Right, yeah, exactly. This as much as I was able to get one, and my dear friend Johnny Wilson, who was also looking to get a Switch 2 at launch, also didn't get an invitation from Amazon or Nintendo, and he has like the family plan like I do, so his daughter plays Switch, so he would have racked up enough hours like I would have done, and still no invite. I was able to sort of frantically call him, and he was able to secure one for himself as well, because Game put this up at like 8:30 at night, so and they tweeted about it, but by the time the morning rolled around, that was it. It was gone. So it's a
shame. You'd like them to send out a newsletter or something to
countdown,
people, give some sort of priority to people instead of it being all the basement dwelling scalpers that are just on Twitter all day that see it go live.
Yeah, they're just refreshing and then trying to fill their baskets, right, and then rip people off on eBay. The one thing I will say though is that the charging at point of order, I suppose, will partially help to mitigate some of the issue with scalpers, in the sense that it's gonna, nobody's gonna be able to then afford to do that. Well, you would hope that would.
I don't know. You put it on a credit card, you still get 20 Switch 2s. I don't know if it put a limit on. You'd hope it.
I think if it's scalpers at the top of my hit list, it's a close number 2 is people that leak things. So like that, I put scalpers only just above that. Game with Passion saying Nintendo didn't even update their Polish website even after a day. So the Polish version of the Nintendo website wasn't even up to date either. Oh, that's such a shame, dude. But I'm glad you've been able to get your invitation. That's really great that you've been able to secure that, because there's been quite a bit of that sort of sharing that online. People saying, I was surprised that I didn't get an invitation or whatever, but I've managed to secure one in X retailer.
I think
yeah, pretty frustrating process for sure.
More stock will come before launch. It always does. Like I think the retailers always go ultra conservative with the initial pre-orders, and then you tend to get waves that come. So hopefully for anyone that wants one, they'll have other opportunities. Maybe Nintendo haven't even contacted everyone. Like it seems so bizarre that you haven't had an invite. But I just coincidentally. I think I saw on one of the gaming websites that the pre-orders had gone live, and they were available on Game when I checked as well. And that's the only time that I felt like I wanted one, is when I had the opportunity to get it there, and I felt like it was scarce, and it's like, oh shit, I might not be able to get one. It's like for 3 months after launch, which I think is probably unlikely. But I'm at peace with where I am with it now.
Yeah, nice.
So I couldn't afford to, but I didn't take the risk.
I'm curious to see how the stock situation will shake out, post-launch. I think it'd be interesting. That launch window, as you get towards end of July, because it's early June, right, that it's coming out. So then, as July rolls around and you're approaching Donkey Kong Bonanza, I am curious to see what just sort of general availability is. I'm always interested seeing, shortly after launch, how easily you can just walk into an Argos, say, and just pick one up. It'll be interesting to see what the tail is on the launch window.
Yeah, I mean June is still like 2 months away that they'll be churning out consoles. So at launch there'll be an extra amount that isn't currently hasn't currently been manufactured. The tariffs have obviously been rolled back to a degree, just this evening, but I expect that will have some impact on the amount they choose to ship to the US. So there might be more available for Europe, and obviously Japan's gonna have the majority, but. Yeah, it will be interesting. I wouldn't surprise me if like Nintendo look at where they're manufacturing stuff, and they've probably got existing manufacturing bases in some of the like countries on the Trump hit list that can keep churning them out for the rest of the world, but they have to have open new manufacturing places in safer countries.
Yeah, and most likely an initial stockpile already in the US that they'll be selling for launch. So they've got at least some before any of the tariffs were applied. So, that seeing pricing post-launch and general availability of stock, not actually at launch, but sort of in the window afterwards, that'll be a very interesting situation to kind of track, because we know we're not in the COVID era anymore. With the silicon shortage that we hit both PS5 and Series X, we're at a time where the world's infrastructure is, other than these tariffs, relatively stable. So just seeing what such an in-demand product looks like in 2025 without a global pandemic going on in the background, I just think there's going to be some interesting and very different context that this console's launching into. With no immediate competitor either. I know that there's the talk of the Xbox handheld in partnership with Ace. Is it Asus they're partnered with potentially?
I think so. I think it was,
the ROG Ally was the closest one I could remember. That was the rumor anyways, but there's no immediate competition right now. So
I'm not sure Nintendo ever have immediate competition, because there's just the IP isn't there that appeals to that same audience on any of the other consoles. And like I know like the closest comparison is the Steam Deck or the ROG Ally or whatever, but it's just completely different games. And those are enthusiast consoles. They're not for like families to get. And there's just it's almost a pointless comparison talking about them together, because
it's redundant with Nintendo generally. Like, but putting them in the same bracket as PlayStation and Xbox is odd. I've always found that really strange. That it's
I think when you had the PSP, it was relevant because that was to an extent targeted at kids and teenagers, as well as PlayStation fans. The Vita was a bit more high end and it was like PlayStation starting to get more into the tech enthusiast zone. but you know, they had like the PSP Go, which I had, which was like properly aimed at kids, really. Well, but obviously the IP wasn't there. They had a few things that kind of crossed over into family, but um, you know, an Xbox, unless Xbox really do a push on developing some family IP, or you know, they've got family IP they choose not to use, um, that reviews critically and can kind of cut through and try to get some people from that Nintendo audience. It's going to be pointless even when they have their own native handheld. It's still not going to. People don't think I need a handheld console. I don't think people think I need a handheld console. Do I get a Switch? Do I get a Steam Deck?
Yeah, I don't think that's the
You either
conversation.
like the games,
Yeah.
no, and obviously we've got this question about whether people are even playing handheld. So yeah, I think it's the games, and it's just convenience that it's a convenience that it's a handheld.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. The looking ahead now to April 12th, so towards the end of this week, Bungie are lifting the lid on Marathon, their reboot of their classic FPS franchise, coming back as a PvP extraction shooter. So, not particularly clear on sort of any specifics, really. I'm hoping that we get perhaps maybe confirmation of a beta. Would be really nice to see from them. Also, I believe it's going to be multi-platform as well. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be all over the place. I know that obviously PlayStation now technically own Bungie, but I believe they committed to those games being multi-platform. Like with any sort of, you know, any new FPS that's entering the space is always going to capture my attention. I mean, Splitgate 2 recently really ticked boxes. I can't wait for that one to finally drop. But Marathon is not something I have any particular history with, but Bungie making something that isn't Destiny, they're doing something new, and in this case revisiting one of their old IP and giving it a fresh take is certainly intriguing. I didn't feel too connected to that teaser trailer. I wasn't really sure what was going on. It seemed a little bit random. I couldn't quite access what was happening in that. I think I'd rather now sort of, you know, dig into this reveal coming up on April 12th. Any expectations from you on that, Mike? Anything you're looking forward to? Is it on your radar?
I think because it's been so long since it was announced, I'd kind of lost any hype that I had for it. But I watched the teaser trailer, which I actually quite liked. I like the little cat in it. And you're kind of having to use your imagination to think what was going on outside the camera shot, which I quite liked. Using the sounds and things in the background. And I watched the initial trailer, and I really is hitting the spot with me. The art style and the sound effects, and I can visualize what I'm expecting the game to look like. So if it meets those expectations, I'm kind of expecting the shooting to be good because it's Bungie and they haven't made a game with bad shooting. And I love the art style and the kind of the premise. So it's a complete reboot, complete departure from what the original Marathon was, which I think is to be expected given the amount of time that's passed. But if it's like what I really want is a something between Halo and Destiny in terms of how it feels in the genre. I know it's an extraction shooter, but if it feels like something in between the two with this kind of art style, I think it could be really good. And obviously, Bungie have a hell of a lot riding on it. Not that Destiny 2 has been a failure or anything, but it's just they're slow at churning stuff out, and I imagine they're a pretty big team, so they need to get on with it and hopefully have a critical success across all the platforms.
Yeah. I think it's worth touching on that actually, because I have some reservations just about where Bungie is at as a studio because of some quite significant restructuring that happened, some quite major layoffs. As the senior leadership team was changed, Sony have kind of come in there and mandated a couple of things that we've read reports about. So what Bungie currently looks like and where that team is probably going to be very different now than it was even 18 months ago, and Marathon's been cooking for a while. So I am curious to see how much of what we saw in that teaser and what we're going to see on the 12th is in fact going to be what that game originally was. I'd love to know that. That would be a fascinating no-clip documentary. I'd love to see them cover the journey of Marathon and perhaps where that thing has evolved over time, given the internal shakeups that have happened at Sony and Bungie. So, yeah, and
yeah. if you have a team that makes one type of game, FPSs, then the culture of the team and the expertise of the people, they know what they're gonna make. They're gonna make shooters that all feel like Halo, which is Destiny feels like Halo. This should feel like Halo, in terms of the shooting. And you've got like, is it 4 teams, or 3 teams that alternate making Call of Duty games, and they all feel like Call of Duty games because they're built on that same code base, and I'm sure they've got very rigid things that they kind of principles that they stick to make the games feel that way. And I think that appears to have been the case from Halo to Destiny, and I think it will be the case from Destiny to Marathon. So I get what you're saying, and I think there's a chance that creatively they make some weird choices, but hopefully they, it still hits the mark. And I don't think Sony will do anything ridiculous with it. I think that it needs to be safe, and I'm hoping they've learnt their lessons from some of the recent mistakes with
the pivot away from live service, as we saw with Concord's closure. That I think Marathon arguably could be a very similar game to Concord, and some of those other high profile cancellations of stuff we never actually even really saw. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how that shakes out. I'm not 100% confident yet where that game is at. I think I need to see... Show me the gameplay, show me the deep dive, and get us an opportunity to go hands-on. I think that would be the quickest way to allay any fears, would be to get yourself a nice closed beta going on, and let people...
Well, hopefully it's a gameplay reveal. I think you and I are normally pretty good at sussing something out. I think we'll know from the gameplay reveal how it's going to do.
Yeah, certainly hope so. So let's get into our deep dive this evening. Just earlier today, Xbox announced the Summer Showcase 2025. This is their Xbox game. I think it's Xbox Game Showcase 2025 was announced, and with an Outer Worlds 2 Direct immediately following it. So that confirmed. I saw Obsidian posted up on social media that some new gameplay footage, 11 minutes of gameplay from something we hadn't seen before from that, and confirmed for this year. Confirmed for 2025, which I maybe I missed a trick on that. I wasn't 100% confident that was coming this year. Hopefully filling the gap slightly, somewhat, that Fable has left towards the end of the year. I think it'd be smart for them to now maybe delay that a couple of months and put it in that November slot, potentially, that we were assuming that Fable was going to occupy. That would be nice for them to have that. We've had such a strong start to the year from their first party, and coming off the back of Indie at the end of 24. So really, really interesting that they've announced it so early. I don't remember them confirming the dates for this showcase and announcing the Direct this far in advance. Maybe I'm sort of, that could be recency bias. I could be forgetting it, but this felt like it was a really early confirmation from them. I often don't expect it till May.
Well, I think the key thing is that it's digital only, so I think they probably had to let journalists and the public know that there wasn't going to be something, so they don't book up tickets for the date they imagine it would be, and so stuff doesn't leak out and you get people making plans. I think that's a big departure. I know, to be honest, it's quite a sad departure for me, for them to do it digital only. Although I like the quality of the presentations the digital presentations that they do feel a bit soulless, as much as they get developers in to do stuff. And I like the developer directs, where it's a bit more personal.
That's the better format of that, I think, that we've seen from any of them so far.
They're too almost too quick, because Xbox have so many games to show. When you include the third party stuff, that they feel they have to give space to the stuff that's coming to Game Pass. Some of the Japanese developers as well, that Microsoft are always trying to
which they've announced
curry favor with.
They've announced they're getting some third party stuff in there too.
Yeah, and it's always like 30 seconds on each game, and then you get a few games where it's a bit longer, and it's just a bit fast paced. So I like the auditorium style. We get a bit of 30 seconds of Phil speaking beforehand,
and some downtime, some reactions to it. I think there is we've spoken before about the pageantry of E3 and the sort of the way live events can cultivate such an exciting response from an audience. That's something that I miss about having a dedicated thing like that. Gamescom is probably the closest now. Gamescom opening night live, or what Jeff does with the Game Awards.
To not even have like the fan fest thing, where they'd have Xbox fans somewhere separately watching it, and all the consoles set up and stuff. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, and I'm not entirely sure, other than cost cutting, why they would do that, unless, I don't know, a bit conspiracy theorist, but unless they've got some stuff to announce that they don't want public reaction to.
Or that they're not ready. These some things they're not ready to actually have people go hands on with. Yeah, and the expectation would be.
Well, we know from that point, we've had it already, but that showcase, they're going to have PlayStation logos on their games, on the trailers. So is that it? Are we going to see they've put PlayStation logos on some games that you would not expect there to be PlayStation logos on? And if it was in an auditorium, you'd get, like we got was it Gamescom with Jeff Keighley, where they announced Indiana Jones, and it just went crazy because it was an auditorium. I know Jeff Keighley didn't help, obviously, but I don't know. It's interesting. There must be something behind it, I think.
There's what we're expecting, given all of the rumors that have been circulating around Xbox producing a handheld. Game with Passion mentioning, and this is, you've helped me with my segue here, bud. He's saying, I'm interested to see what the surprises are, and I think that's relevant to our deep dive conversation in tonight's podcast. So we asked our community question in our Discord. For anyone that is listening or watching that isn't currently a member, please do consider jumping into the Burly Bird Discord. I would love E-Day this year. I don't think it will be, but I'd love E-Day to come out this year. I'm so ready for that game.
Oh, they need to take their time with it. It needs to
let it cook.
That needs to
let
be
it cook.
90 plus Metacritic.
Let it cook. 2026 summer, please. That would be perfect timing for me. Our deep dive question we asked: with Switch 2 revealed and both Xbox and PlayStation rumored to be developing native handhelds, our question was: do you play more handheld games, including mobile, or PC/home console these days? What is generally people's split? I know that just the other day, I was sitting there with my daughter and she was just, watching Bluey and having a great time. I was sitting there in the living room thinking, I don't want to go to my console right now, put my headphones on. I wish I could just sit here playing my Switch, but all my Joy-Cons are broken. But I looking at Switch 2, or actually having an Xbox device that's not a phone clip, I don't get on with those. I find them really uncomfortable. I want a proper controller. I want it to feel, or if it's going to be a handheld, I want it to be a proper sized device. So I have found myself more and more, even though I could answer this question by saying, I skew very much to playing my Switch docked or at the PC or at the console, I'm ready to do a bit more handheld gaming. I'm ready to take a bit of a step into that. And we put it out to our community. Big Manny mentioning in Discord, definitely more home console stuff. Apart from Cookie Clicker, I don't play anything on my phone, and I haven't taken my Switch out of its dock for a very long time. I don't play any. I should point out, I don't play a single video game on my phone. Not one, not even a slight little mobile game. I don't do any of that.
Yeah, me neither.
Magic Musto coming in saying he mainly plays PS5, therefore handheld doesn't really appeal. He does, however, play mobile games while, and I quote, on the throne. But yeah, no sort of appeal there particularly. Kiko mentioned a little bit of both. He was a bit sort of 50-50 actually between home console, gaming on a TV and also playing handheld. But gave a little shout out to the 3DS because he's still rocking his 3DS, and that's great. I've got a lot of love for that console.
I miss the dedicated handhelds. I have to say, and the games that are crafted specifically for those.
Yeah.
Again, similar to the E3 conversation, a bit sad that we will probably never see that again. Hard to imagine now that they would ever go back to having separate teams working on that stuff.
Well, Game with Passion saying, I'm not really sure what they will show. Let's dig into that. I'm hoping. Here's what I'm hoping to see, but this isn't a prediction, so I'm not ready to lay any bets on the line just yet. We'll save that for the end of tonight. But I'm hoping we get windows. So like, even if it's a year, even if it just says 2026 or whatever, I hope we get launch windows for Perfect Dark, State of Decay 3, and Gears of War E-Day. I think we're now in a place right now, 2025, off the back of what has been, I think, quite a strong start to the year, and obviously got Doom next month as well, to then follow that in June with the showcase, and then outline, have Outer Worlds be given a date. I think that needs a date for the end of the year to fill the Fable gap. You then got Call of Duty at the end of the year, inevitably, as well. But give those three games, State of Decay, Perfect Dark, and Gears E-Day. I'd like to see some launch windows for those, please.
Yeah, I really want to. Oh well, I don't so much care about the launch window. Sorry, window. I want to see gameplay of State of Decay. Desperately want to see gameplay.
Yeah. Show us that game exists and runs well, please.
Yeah. And similarly, Fable. I want to see extensive gameplay of Fable. I know the game's coming relatively soon, but those are probably the two that I'm most looking forward to, other than stuff like Gears, which is obviously I think is further out. I'm curious as to whether there will be another surprise for this year, because the back end of the year is feeling a bit light, but you suspect that's because of GTA. Obviously, they have Call of Duty and they got Outer Worlds 2, which is probably enough.
And they would have had Fable.
Bearing in mind that GTA... Yeah, but then maybe Outer Worlds was... they could have done an Avowed with it and just pushed it. If they wanted Fable to come in before Christmas. But yeah, I suspect there might. But obviously, with the Oblivion remake keeps getting thrown about. I don't think that would do anything crazy numbers wise. I think we're probably due another Forza game of some description. Obviously, Playground working on Fable, but whether there's something coming.
I saw some people. I saw some people expecting maybe a Horizon 6 announcement, especially since all that hype around 5 being ported to PS5. That could Horizon 6 being announced as like a exclusive window, like they're now we put it to the test. A non sort of like Lucasfilm games with indie was kind of the edge case, I think, with a 3-month window. Do we see like a 6-month turnaround on that? Game with Passion mentioning, I forgot about State of Decay. You want to see the Splinter Cell remake? Yeah, I'm going to be all on board for that. Absolutely adore Splinter Cell. Shout out Conviction. And Oblivion is rumored to be next week, according to Gaming with Passion.
I keep seeing people talking about
every week.
Oblivion.
Every week
it's coming this week. It's coming this week.
Yeah, I know. We don't, just for context, Mike and I do not put any stock, or we try to avoid covering leaks, etc. There's a lot going on around something that Respawn apparently are working on that, again, I just don't want to get into just because of...
There's that game from the Just Cause developers that we haven't seen since
Contraband.
Contraband, was it?
Contraband.
I'd love to see that, because I have a lot of faith in that developer. So that'd be, we had a few of those where I think Microsoft were desperate to show they had a roadmap similar to the PlayStation situation. And then the games we never saw again, like State of Decay and Contraband.
This would be a good showcase for that, actually. If, say, for things like Gears E-Day weren't quite polished enough, ready to show yet, you could plug that gap by dating Perfect Dark, showing State of Decay, and then like bringing back Contraband, say, as like another. Compared
to last year, it does feel a little bit light, like in terms of what we know and what we would expect to see. So I think the way, if they don't have a bunch of new stuff to announce, the way to make it a great show is, like we said, lots of gameplay of Fable, lots of gameplay of State of Decay, Perfect Dark, Contraband. The stuff that
we know about
has been a bit. Oh, even I can't even remember the name of the Everwild.
Yeah,
it's been so long. I think they'll show Everwild because Phil's been talking about it.
So okay, I'm going to put my first bet in. I love a spicy bet.
Okay,
Everwild is not going to appear at the showcase. Okay,
I think
so I'm just going to put that down there. We'll put that in the bet tracker.
I'm happy to put a bet in on that. Yeah.
Okay, and are you going to go the other way? Are you going to say that it is? Okay. So
they can't keep showing Sea of Thieves season.
No, they can. They can. The rare logo's going to come up. It's going to show a forest, and we're going to think it's Everwild, and it's then going to pan to the ocean, and we're going to see a pirate ship. It's going to be Sea of Thieves, season 28 or whatever they're on right now.
Or they show Banjo, and then it's a Banjo thing, emote for Sea of Thieves or something.
If I'm wrong, so here's my, and you're going to have to, because you're coming in on this with me, so you're going to have to come up with something for yourself. If I don't think so, I'm locking it in. Everwild is not going to appear at the showcase. If it does appear, I have to do an introduction to a live stream pre-written in the style of the Gruntilda speech and like the rhyming cadence. So I have to do that, but I have to say it. I have to say the intro in sort of my Gruntilda voice, like I'm John and Garrett, meh. But it has to rhyme. It has to have the full. I have to pre-prepare an introduction with a rhyming cadence and do it live on stream. So
Okay.
That's
I don't know. I'll have to think of one for myself.
excellent. I'll be holding you to it. Anything else we are expecting to see or hoping to see from the game showcase this summer?
It wouldn't surprise me if they show the third party, the Asus handheld. I don't know if we've got a release date for that, but I think they'll try to make a bit more of that than just, you know, being a handheld with Xbox
with a marketing deal or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there'll be some surprises in terms of the games that have PlayStation logos on.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah. The only thing I can think of, really.
Big Manny's right. The stakes are high. We're entering into a weird time right now. You know, we're sort of coming towards the end of these gens. Switch 2 obviously on the cusp of launching. I actually think, and it could be like a little teaser. It could be like the one more thing. I think Halo might make an appearance.
I was just gonna say, I think Bungie might.
Halo. I think
Bungie.
343. Well, now Halo Studios rebranded. I think Halo Studios appears in some form. Whether that is that the first thing they're actually going to publish is a Switch port and a PS5 port of the Master Chief Collection, I could see that appearing at the showcase.
You think they'll show a game that's not even coming to Xbox?
Yes, and I think they follow it by saying it's like a teaser of the next Halo game. They do that. They sort of the quote unquote bad news, and then they follow it with a teaser for another Halo game.
I mean, it is a really interesting concept as to whether, because you know it's Xbox games showcase or whatever, and it's digital only. Are they going to think about pivoting it to something that appeals to Switch owners and play? Like, if you own a PlayStation, you should watch the Xbox Game Showcase,
right?
Because Xbox is now a publisher on PlayStation.
You're gonna want to tune in to that kind of yeah.
They're going that way, and with putting the logos on the trailers and stuff. I think this year might be a bridge too far. I think until we get to the stage that the expectation is that every game is coming to PlayStation, which we're not quite there yet, as much as people are saying we're there. I think, next year or the year after maybe, but I can't see them announcing something that isn't even being released on Xbox. But who knows?
I won't put a bet on it because I'm bedded out for tonight.
Yeah, you're feeling a month.
Yeah, I'll see how I feel when May's batch of system links roll around. I'll see how I'm feeling on that one. I've done my Everwild bet, so I'll leave it at that. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of System Link, which is recorded live here on both Twitch and YouTube every single Wednesday. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Mike from the Xbox Guide. Mike, where can people find you?
They can find me at thexboxguide.com and at the Xbox Guide on Threads and Blue Sky. I just did the review of Game Pass for March. I've been thinking about doing some more content, but I don't know. I haven't quite had the time, but hopefully, there'll be a couple of more articles going up over the next few weeks as well.
Yeah, nice. Well, we'll be there to support and check that out. Shout out to everyone that jumped into our chat this evening. We had across, Game with Passion. Great to see you jumping in, man. All the way from Poland. So nice for you to jump in and join us. We had Chronic UK, Big Manny. Thank you guys so much for jumping in and supporting us. It is really, really appreciated. You can find us on all of the things at Burly Media. That's Threads, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Podbean, and also our Discord, where you can get into our community question every single Wednesday and weigh in on the show, have your comments read out live on air. We'll be back this Saturday for a Burly Bird live. Again, we never know what we're going to play until the day, so do keep an eye on our socials and our Discord to check that out. We do often put up a vote as well in our channel for that, so if you want to vote on something that you're interested for us to play, then please do come and check out our Discord and get your voice heard in there. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.
See ya.